Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Only Land Fan Show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Ajay Sharma. Ajay Sharma has been investing in vacant land since September of 2020. After working in the land business part-time for just 18 months, Ajay transitioned to full-time at the age of 23. Since then, he has completed several deals in all shapes and sizes, ranging from a few $1,000s in profits to a few $100,000 in profits. Ajay and his COO now run a team of three and a consistent six-figure net business. Ajay, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I am living the dream, Kendall.
Living the dream. I love it. So, Ajay, I'm so excited to have you on because we're talking about a very, very hot topic right now in the land space, which is how to close. And you've been putting out so much content around this lately. So excited to have you on. Let's jump right in. For those that are listening, and the term closing might be something that they haven't really heard before and not very familiar with. Can you just talk us through how does your definition of closing fit into the acquisitions process?
Totally, man. Totally. First and foremost, Kendall, thanks for having me on, man. It's always a pleasure to be on with the OLF crew. I love being here. I love chatting with you. I'm honored that we get to be friends and hang out, man. When we talk about closing in this, I think it's important first to peel back the layer on what's happening here, right? A lot of people think when they get into vacant land that they're jumping into the real estate business, right? But the reality is everybody's jumping into a marketing and sales business. Okay. So there's two pieces there. Marketing, the second piece is sales, right? And I'll break both down here in a second. Marketing, if you want to boil it down nuts and bolts, is essentially telling a group of people, ideally an avatar that you can do business with, what you offer, right? So to break this down simply, we as land business owners reach out to people that own vacant land and say, hey, I buy land. I buy land for cash. Hi. That's
Yeah.
marketing. Okay.
Yeah.
The next piece is once somebody looks at our postcard, looks at our text message, sees our email, whatever it is, and decides, maybe I want to sell, and they reach out to us, now triggers what we call sales. How do I interact with this person and influence them in a way that, in like my biased opinion, brings us the ideal outcome, which for us, I like to quantify as a signed contract. Okay. So marketing and sales business. I think there's so many smart people in land that have been talking about marketing for a long time. Our mutual friends, Alicia Jarrett, Callan Faulkner, just to name a few power women in the land space that
Yeah.
market really well, teach investors to market well, have done for you services that are awesome. I think there's a level of maturity the niche has when it comes to marketing. The problem I've been trying to solve is I have so many investors reach out to me where they're like, man, I've got all these texts, I've got all these phone calls, but there's no deals. And I'm like, false, my friend. There are lots and lots and lots and lots of deals out there. And so we are going to be talking about how do I take a lead, somebody who is interested in selling a property, and optimize that lead to get what I consider the desired outcome of a contract. The last thing I'll say on this matter, Kendall, is one of my favorite quotes to explain how this works is from Andy Elliott, who's a famous sales trainer, bald head, six pack. He's the guy that got famous for if you don't have a six pack, you don't work for me.
Oh,
He's a
yeah.
really cool guy, actually. I just went to his office out in Scottsdale last week. I've nothing but love for their team and everything they're doing. He's an intense guy, but with good reason. So he's a cool dude.
Do they
But
all have six packs there?
man, I'm going to be honest. I think so. I saw one guy that was, how do I say this PC way, did not have a six pack. There we go. Yeah, I think he's probably got 90 days. Andy Elliott's interesting. If you follow his content, he frequently makes bets with people where he's like, if you have a six pack in 90 days, I'll write you a $50,000 check. No joke. To the point where his wife has actually come out and said they budget, I think it was like 20 or 30K every month to write these checks to people that end up getting six packs.
I love it. I
It's
love
absurd.
it.
Now, this guy did 160 million in sales this year, so he's got lots of money. Okay. Okay. Sorry. My whole point here is Andy Elliott has this quote that I have digested, and he probably heard it from somebody else. But our job as salespeople is to help people make decisions. Okay. I'm going to say that again. Our job as salespeople is to help people make decisions. Okay. People make decisions based on information. I'm going to say it again. People make decisions based on information. My job as a salesperson, if I'm trying to help you, Kendall, make a decision, means that I need to extract as much relevant information out of you as possible, even if it's not information that's top of mind for your conscious brain. So, we're going to be talking about how do we actually train up somebody from no sales background, doesn't understand sales or sales process, all the way through being an expert closer, which means getting that desired outcome of a signed contract. Did that help answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And one of the things that you pointed out, you said this early on, was that you talk to a lot of land investors and they say there are not enough deals out there. And I hear the same thing. I talk to lots of land investors and a lot of people say the market is too saturated. There's so much competition. I think the reason why this is so important, this topic is so important, is because this, in my opinion, is what separates the wheat from the chaff. This is what will give you the competitive edge. It's not the lowest price always wins. It's
Totally.
this closing approach. I love it. So let's jump into this. We've got some call reviews that we're going to be doing in a little bit. But first, I would like for you to lay the groundwork. If someone's not familiar with this concept of what is a call review, is it
Totally.
more than just listening to a call and saying, yeah, I think that was good? Talk us through what your definition of a call review is and how you approach that.
Totally, Kendall. Totally. I'm so excited because this is something, man. I talk to investors. I was on the phone with an investor today. I won't name his name. He's a killer. He has a background in high ticket sales, started doing land 13 months ago. And he told me in his first year, like HUD to HUD money that has hit his bank account, I think they've already done a 500,000 in gross profits. So that's not quite net, but that is an accomplishment, you
Yeah,
know? In 13 months, man, that's wicked, especially because any investor that's been doing this for a number of years knows 2024 was not an easy year to sell properties.
yeah,
Obviously, we sold multi six figures worth of them, but man, like we got hurt too. This was not the best market. I am optimistic about what's coming. I don't have a glass ball or whatever, but the reason I'm bringing this up is this guy was a killer. And we got on today, and he had a sales background. And I asked him, sir, how often are you doing call reviews with your team? And he was like, never. I was like, okay. Can we agree that these are important? And he was like, absolutely. And I'm like, sweet. Here's the thing about a call review, Kendall, is typically you have the person who's on the phone, right? We'll call them an acquisition manager. And then you have the person reviewing the call, which in an ideal world is some level of a sales manager. Most of us land business owners are a staff of 3 to 7, sometimes smaller. So, like, guys, that's you, that's the business owner if you're listening to this. Okay. Whoever is managing what we call the sales process should be listening to that. And sales process is this really big term. I talked a lot about this in a past interview you did. I don't know if you can link it in the show notes, Kendall, but I went
yeah.
in on everything we do in our process, how we lay it out. I've talked about objections here. I've talked about all kinds of stuff, right? Today, I want to talk about what training looks like to get people to a place where they can become closers, right? So, I'm sorry, man. You ask me fairly simple questions, and I just love laying down foundation. I hope that's okay.
I
Um,
love it. We're scaffolding, and I'm right with you. I'm right with you.
Sweet. Awesome. So, as we talk about what is a call review, man, it is simply us having a recorded call, listening to it together, and the person who is the sales manager is giving the acquisition manager direct feedback on that call. Now, there's a few pieces there I want to dive into. The first one being, like I just mentioned with sales process, Kendall, you've got process, you've got people. And a mentor of mine through the Collective Genius Network, his name's Ren Bartlett. He has this expression: process is to be managed and people are to be coached. Okay. I'm going to say
Mm.
that again. And I know I repeat things a lot, but it helps things stick. Process is to be managed and people are to be coached, right? Like, guys, you hear the term manager. You know what I mean? If I'm like, oh, my manager, nobody uses that word. And if they do, they hate it, to be honest. There's like this distaste, right? But
Sure.
like, we hire coaches. I'm a coach. Kendall, you're a coach. People tell me with pride that Kendall is one of their coaches. You know what I mean? There's a piece of admiration there. It's I look up to somebody who's teaching me something that I get to use in my life, in my business to drive a better desired outcome. And so there's an admiration with the term coach. And I think the lesson there is it's because of the methodology, right? Managers, you think micromanaging, you think viewing over your shoulder, you think they want it done a certain way, right? Coaches help you be the best version of yourself that they know you're capable of, right? That's like the distinction here. The reason I'm bringing all this up is because scripting is an example of a process. When I write my 7-page script that I share with people that outlines how do I start a call? How do I make sure I don't get objections? How do I get a contract signed? How do I overcome objections when they come? Right? That's a process, man. And that process comes from me hearing it on my own team hundreds of times, listening to other investors' calls dozens, hundreds of times, right? So I know what's going to come. So you create a process so it doesn't happen again, right? In the same way that I might have a process of getting a contract signed really quickly so that a seller doesn't ghost me, or I might triple dial so they pick up the phone, right? In that same vein, I've got a process in that script, right? Now, I may give somebody a script, i.e., managing, and then I review a call and I need to coach them up to actually use the tool well. And so there's a delineation there. So as we dive into call reviews, I know you ask such simple questions, man. I hope I'm not going too deep, but I'm just me.
Never an issue with that.
I
Just
love it.
this is gold.
Sweet, man. I appreciate it. So my goal is if I'm a sales manager, I want to coach up my reps, my acquisition managers, whoever's on the phones to be the version of themselves I know that they're capable of. That makes sense?
Total sense. Now, I also want to point out a couple of things that you said. So you said that these are recorded calls, right? So these are not things that happen. They typically don't happen live. You're not listening into calls. You could if you wanted, but usually these are recorded calls. So I
Right.
think that's really important to point out. If you're not already recording your calls, you totally should be. And just to piggyback off of what you're saying, the way that you've outlined this is so beautiful in terms of you will be coaching someone else, listening to another team member. But look, this is really valuable information for people that might be like one woman or one man shows too. Going back and listening to your own calls and
Oh,
reviewing your own calls. You want to
yeah.
talk about growth? Like, review your own call. First of all, get over the fact that, like, I hate my own voice. That's the first you have to get over, right? Listening to those call reviews. But yeah, so this is fantastic. So you are using this process as a tool to be able to coach either yourself or a team member on how to be more effective as a closer.
Exactly. And keep in mind, I like to communicate desired outcomes in all my processes, including certain calls. So in the past, Kendall, I know we've talked about the 2-call close, which is what we use because we do so much neutral messaging. If you don't know what that is, we might do text messages, RVMs, neutral letters, emails, whatever. And a seller comes back and says, hey, I'm interested. Our first call is what I call the lead manager call, which is largely based on qualifying the property. So I'm asking questions we all ask: road access, topography, slope, wetland, floodplain, that sort of stuff I usually can check out on my own, but it's good for the conversation. My desired outcome of that call is 2 things. Number 1, I need to set an appointment for my closer. And number 2, I need to get an asking price out of my seller. Those are my desired outcomes, right? On an acquisition manager call, a call number 2, a closer call, whatever you want to call it, my desired outcomes are basically a yes or a no, right? I need to get to an end state, more or less, set next steps. But in an ideal world, like, your goal of every single call should be a signed PA and a price that I want. There's a bunch of things that fit inside of that. There's sales process, there's leading up to the price, there's all kinds of stuff. As I think through this, it's what's the desired outcome? My desired outcome of listening to a call is to coach somebody up so they get more contracts. And this stuff works. You know what I mean? Like, I've seen it over and over again. Most people that are not getting any sales training, obviously depends who you train with and what you do, but I've seen people that I work with in 6 weeks actually double their contracts getting signed. Now, because of all these lawsuits I see online, I always like to disclose past performance does not guarantee future results, right? What's that stuff we got to do now, Kendall? So want to be careful. But my point being, this is a really effective tool in your own business. Even if you don't bring someone in from the outside, there's so many free resources out there. Like, you can do this. You can implement this internally in your business.
Hey, land fans, looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the Only Land Fans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game-changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group. This is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at onlylandfansgroup.com and join the conversation today. That's onlylandfansgroup.com. See you there. Yeah, love that. Love that. So we're going to be doing some call call reviews in just a second. Before we jump into that, though, can you talk a little bit about the general structure of what a call review might look
Totally.
like in your brain? How do you conceptualize it and organize it? That way, you have a repeatable process to how you're approaching those reviews every time.
Yep, great question, Kendall. So when I'm listening to a call, I'm typically going to do three main things. Okay. Now, keep in mind too, in the format of it, if I'm listening to the call, I like to do that live with the acquisition manager, assuming I'm the sales manager here. So let's say you're my sales manager, Kendall. You and I should be on the call together so that I can hear myself talk. And yeah, it's guys, it's nerve wracking. There's anxiety, there's ego, there's all kinds of stuff, right? But you need to ask yourself, what do you care more about? Do you care more about being comfortable or do you care more about getting more signed contracts? Because that's the
Yeah.
question here, you
Yeah. Hey,
know?
just to clarify for a second, when you say be on the call live, you're talking about you are listening to a recording of a call that's already happened, and you are listening to that with the person that you're coaching, not you're on the actual sales call listening, right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay,
I am not listening to people pound the phones live. I am listening to the recording with my sales rep, my acquisitions manager that made that call.
perfect.
And we are on a Zoom live together so we can listen to it. Does that
With
answer the question?
yeah, cameras
Okay.
turned on because I want to see faces. That's
Yep.
so important. I love that. Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. When I'm doing that call, I'm looking for three main things. The first one is a piece of reflection. So we're going to listen to the entire call and I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, Kendall, what did you do well? And you're only allowed good self-talk here. If I catch you slipping into insulting yourself, beating yourself up, I stop you. I say, Kendall, we're only focused on what we did well. The reason for that being we always want to call out and highlight behaviors we want reinforced. And we want to be able to celebrate like what people are doing well. And then yep, exactly, Mark. And then we want to go into where could you have improved? Right. And notice I didn't ask what'd you do poorly, right? It's, hey, where could we have improved? Where's our room for growth here? And you're going to tell me some things and I may agree or disagree. And then I'm going to give you my feedback. In an ideal world, as I'm listening, I'm recording timestamps at some level. If you have a software that transcribes the calls, it really helps scrolling through it. I'm still trying to find a good call review software, so bear with me. I don't have a tool recommendation for everybody right now. But number one is time for reflection. I want to reflect with my rep. What did you do? What could we have done better? What could we have improved? Number two, then, is I'm going to go back in the call and we're going to re-listen to points that I had specific feedback. Okay. So I'm going to listen to it and I'm going to be like, did you hear that right there? And guys, there's so many nuances with what we're doing. When I'm training reps, a lot of times I'm not telling them exactly what's going on. A lot of times I want to lead you there. One of my favorite principles from How to Win Friends and Influence People is make people think ideas are their own. And so we'll talk through a couple of examples of that later, but it's really important when you're coaching somebody, you don't give them the answer. You lead them there by asking them questions for them to say it themselves. And we'll talk more about that. Kendall's nodding his head because he's a leader and he understands that and he knows how this goes.
Socratic method, baby.
Socratic method, exactly. And it gets it to stick longer too.
Yeah.
And then number three is role play. Okay. And guys, I'm talking about very professional role play here. Okay. So get your minds out of the gutters when I'm talking here. What this means is like, Kendall, if we just heard a part and let's say like the seller throws something at us that's difficult, or even it's something we hear all the time, I got to show this to my attorney, right? Now I can ask you questions and coach you, but at the end of the day, man, we just need to practice that. And so what I do as a leader, and sorry, we switched roles here, Kendall. I am now sales manager, so I can speak on the topic. I hope that's okay. But Kendall,
Perfect.
if you and I are doing this, my friend, and you're an acquisitions manager and I'm a sales manager.
Imagine having a complete toolkit for success right at your fingertips. That's exactly what you get with Only Land Fan School, our premium online community. For a low monthly fee, access our treasure trove of resources, the on-market deals course, acquisitions tool suite, and Dispo Secrets library. Plus, connect with fellow flippers in our active community. Whether you're hunting for deals or closing sales, Only Land Fan School has you covered with step-by-step guidance and insider knowledge. Ready to supercharge your land flipping journey? Join Only Land Fan School at olfschool.com today.
I'm going to say, hey, man, I'm a leader. So I'm going to lead by example. You play the seller. You say the exact thing in whatever nasty tone you want. And I'm going to be the acquisitions manager to show you how I would handle that. Boom, inserted. And now we do the thing. Okay. Now, what's cool is after that, I ask you, hey, what did you hear in that? What did you learn from that? Again, Socratic method. I want them to consciously verbalize their takeaways. And then we switch. And that's where it gets scary.
Wow.
And people hate this part. But then we switch. And now I get to be mean, nasty seller, right? You have to be acquisitions manager. Because at the end of the day, man, I can coach you on it. But just like the best way to get better at sales is to sell. One caveat though, man, like if I'm a business owner paying for leads, Kendall, what do you think a lead costs? I see somewhere between 40 and 250 bucks. Would you agree? Is that kind of the range depending on marketing
Yeah.
qualification? There's a bunch of variables that go into that, but all in, right? Data, scrubbing, all the things like a lead is somewhere between 40 and 250 bucks. Should I really let my brand new closer go burn 5 leads to get practice? That's $200. I don't know about you
Right.
guys. I don't like lighting $200 on fire. Okay. And so
Exactly.
role play is really important. Number one, for ramp up, but number two, it becomes increasingly important to just train up your reps much faster so they're not burning your leads. So what I would suggest, just quick side note here, what I would suggest if you're getting somebody new in, assuming you've been in the business for any reasonable amount of time, you've got a bank of leads of sellers that have told you no. That is the perfect bank for them to train off of. You might get surprised. They might pull a deal out. You'd be shocked at how many of those turn into deals in the future. So potentially revenue generating. You already have it marked as a no, and they can talk to real people. Anyways, Kendall, just to recap, when we're talking 3 pieces for a successful call review, number one, time for reflection. I want to talk about both what they did well and where they could have improved. Number two, I want to be able to pause during the call and go over certain sections so I can call out behaviors in the sellers, go over it. And then number three, leading into role play. So we can role play what we need to, get the practice in that we need to, and just drill it until you get it where it feels like second nature. Because I need you to be confident to the point where when you're in a high stakes conversation with the seller, man, some of these sellers come at you, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I need to be ready in that moment for when they come at me that I can whip out what we just talked about. Because let's be real, we hear the same 7 to 12 things from every single seller. There's only so many types of objections. I promise. I've done a lot of these. You get some weird ones. Don't get me wrong. You get some weird ones. But if you can learn how to handle 80 to 90% of the crap that sellers throw at us, guys, you are equipped to close a lot more deals. I promise.
Yeah.
And the last
Totally.
thing I'm going to say on this matter is a lot of people focus on everything before what we call the close. I know we're talking about closing, big topic. If we wanted to dive into the close, like the actual negotiation, make the offer. Guys, if this is your first time listening to one of my interviews, I've been blessed by Kendall that this is like my fourth or fifth time on Only Land Fans. And I'm so grateful for it, man, because I try to give away as much as possible every time I'm on here. I do not take it for granted. But if you are on the phone with a seller and you have a number, please always make the offer. I know they're asking prices above what you can do. I know it might be above market value. It might be triple market value. I have seen those turn into flips. I know it sounds crazy. You're already on the phone. Just go ahead and make the offer. That's going for the close, making the offer. Because if you don't even give them the ability to tell you yes, it's automatically a no and you're already on the phone. They can't kill you, right? Unless they hunt you down, which I don't know. I don't want to jinx this, so I'm going to stop talking about it. But the point being, the risk is relatively low to offer somebody a price on a property that you've already got in your pipeline, that you've already spent time comping, that you've already spoken with. So just make the offer, go for the close. We'll drill on the close, we'll work on the close. If you get better at just that piece, you will close a lot more deals.
Yeah, what I love so much about that too is it gets the focus off of the script because I talk to so many people who approach the script, the closing script, as almost like a spell book. I just have to say these exact words, and then that objection magically goes away. But the thing is, sellers can tell when you're reading a script, right? Which is why I actually don't like to use scripts. I use them as training tools. But when my acquisition manager is on the phone, there is no script, right? There's bullet points, maybe as a check, but I don't like to be read to as a script when I'm on call. So don't read to
Totally,
me,
man.
you know?
Totally. And I will say, like, on that note, most people hate scripts and you shouldn't sound scripted, right? What I will say is, I like to say that, like, a script should be a tool. And I think this is where people get it wrong is a majority of people hear the word script as literally just pinging my buddy Jerry. Everyone knows Jerry the other day. And he was like, man, the word script makes my skin crawl. And I'm like, dude, I get it. But at a certain point, like I need a standardized framework as to how to
Yes.
have this conversation, right? So we need to be speaking the same language because I can't tell you, Kendall, you didn't do this thing if I don't have a process for it. And so I think of script as a process. It's a tool to serve you so you can be guided in the conversation, which is why, like, you've
Really.
seen a script that I write. I have big buckets up top. I have variations of things you can say, and I have them bulleted out. It's not just like a line by line by line thing to read off of, right? We're not telemarketers selling diabetes pills, which
Which is a hustle, apparently.
yeah,
But
right. I'm just thinking of that episode of The Office where he gets the second job and he's selling like the lipofedrin or whatever it is. And it's hysterical, man.
so good. But I really like what you were talking about, the variation, because I do something similar in terms of I like for my team members to memorize that framework in a specific way of saying it. And once they get really comfortable with saying it when we're practicing, I'll say, okay, you have to say it completely different now. You have to say the same thing, just completely different. Because a lot of times, just how many times have we seen the Star Spangled Banner being sung live and people like lose where they are and it's just total fail and they have to go back because they've memorized something, right?
Yeah.
And so oftentimes I've heard so many closers get, or even like cold call agents, like they'll get lost in the script and so they have to start from the beginning. And you're like, okay, you might as well have just said, hold on, I lost my place in the script. I'm going to start over again. So those variations, I think that's so important.
That's great, man. I love that. I also just I chuckle because we're friends and I love that you brought up the Star Spangled Banner because I think it just highlights some of your background that people don't know that you spent decades in music and you still judge band competitions to this
Yeah.
day. Talk about it
Yeah.
much on socials, but obviously just us being friends, I know that. And I'm like, why would he bring up the Star Spangled Banner? That seems like an odd thing. And I'm like, oh, you probably heard it 1,000 times. Honestly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, a few thousand and
yeah,
not all
no
great.
kidding.
But yeah, okay, so I love this. So we've got a framework for the call reviews. Are you
Yep.
ready to jump into some call reviews? Ready to do this?
I am ready, Kendall, as long as I do have sharing options. Let's go. Okay, sweet.
Love it. All right. For those listening, these are anonymous call reviews that people have submitted. And so we're going to go ahead and listen to some calls. And Ajay is going to walk us through this call review process and what he's hearing.
Yes, sir. Kendall, can you see my screen?
I can.
And I did select share sound, but just to verify, will you give me a thumbs up once the player starts going? Just
Yep.
tell me if you can hear it. Sweet, thank you.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Good.
Good evening. Good evening. I've been trying to call you the last 2 weeks. I talked to you last week about the property in Maple Hill.
Okay.
Yes, I'm so happy I was able to get a hold of you. But yes, good evening. I'm so sorry it's a little late, but I wanted to do.
Oh, you're calling from Texas, so it's not that late down there.
Yes, yeah. If you have a couple minutes, I do want to lay out a couple numbers for you. Our client came back with an offer for the property in Maple Hill.
Okay.
Yeah. So far, what we've noticed is that investors in this area are paying around 70 to 80,000 for a similar property. I talked to my client about this, and we went over how much the value of the property is, plus the road frontage. At this moment, I can offer you up to $125,000 for the property.
125,000 for all of the almost 29 acres.
Yes.
Okay. I'd have to discuss it with my husband. He's out here now. We're up to 100 and. I'm writing this down. Did you say 125K?
Yes, 125.
Okay. Alrighty. May I call you back tomorrow, like midday?
Of course, no problem.
Because it's my name and Edward's name
Yes.
on the property.
Yes. Of course, no problem. I'd love to have both of you on the call, so in case we like.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
When I call you back, I'll make sure Edward is here.
Thank you. Thank you. I would love that.
Okay. Alrighty. Thank you for your offer.
Of course.
And okay, if we accept your offer, when do we go to closing and that means we get that in our hand, that amount.
That is usually 30 days. That's the longest that we go,
Okay.
but we close earlier than that.
Okay. All right. That sounds very good. Okay. That sounds good to me, but I'll have to run it past my hubby, and
Of course.
we'll call you like midday tomorrow.
All right. That sounds perfect. I'll keep the phone lines open for that.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
so much.
Okay,
Thank you. Have a
bye.
good night.
Okay, so if you heard me typing, that was me taking notes, not like writing emails. Okay. Apologies if you heard my keyboard. I know it's a little loud. I really like the sound of it though. So I have a ton of notes here. Normally, if I were on with the actual closer, I would be asking them questions, right? Kendall, I know we made a couple of tweaks on this. My question would just be, did she introduce herself on this call? Uh,
Yes.
okay,
Yes. And
sweet.
then that part has been edited out to keep it anonymous.
That makes sense, and that's totally fine. But I was just going to be like, dude, what the crap? How did this person not intro themselves? I'm like, oh, wait, I know you said we edited it just to keep the call anonymous. That's great. That's fine. Totally okay. But a few seconds in here, we started with, hey, I'm sorry it's late. Do you have a few minutes? Let's re-listen to that part.
Hello.
Hello. How are you?
Good. Good.
Good evening. Good evening. I've been trying to call you the last 2 weeks. I talked to you last week about the property in Maple Hill.
Okay.
Yes, I'm so happy I was able to get a hold of you. But yes, good evening. I'm so sorry it's a little late, but I wanted to do.
Oh, you're calling from Texas, so it's not that late down.
Okay, so right there. Good evening. Good evening. I've been trying to get a hold of you for weeks. I know it's super late. If anybody here studies Jeremy Lee Minor, I think he describes this really well. He talks about like authority, status dynamics, power dynamics in this. And immediately this closer has put themselves on a much lower pedestal than the seller, like right off the bat in several ways. The first one, why tell her I've been trying to get a hold of you for weeks? It serves no purpose in the call. And this is something I talk about with my clients a lot. I'm like, hey, every word, every sentence needs to drive a purpose. If that purpose is rapport, that's okay. I don't mean to be a robot or to be maniacal, but telling a seller, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you for weeks, that adds no value to our conversation, literally none. Okay. Number two, don't apologize, right? Hey, I'm sorry. I know this, like, I know it's late. Gosh, don't ever say I'm sorry. Again, lower status. Instead, I would just ask if it's a bad time, right? Hey, Mrs. Seller, is now a bad time? And I like asking bad time instead of good time just because it inherently gets the seller to lean in a bit. No, it's not a bad time. And if it is, they'll tell you. Like they'll tell you if it's too late. I'm suspecting this call wasn't at midnight because most people are asleep by midnight unless your name's Kendall Lejeune.
That's right.
Most So as long as it was like within a reasonable let's call it like 8:39, it's fair game. I think the TCPA might have laws depending on if it's a cold call, but this is already a nurtured lead, so it's not. So yeah, I've got that right there. Next, we just go straight to numbers. We're 30 seconds in. We haven't talked anything at all, and we dive straight into an offer. And I'll be honest, I was a little confused because it sounded like there were two offers here. Let me see if I can find it.
Thousand for a similar property. I talked to around 70 to 80.
Right here.
Or what we've noticed is that investors in this area are paying around 70 to 80,000 for a similar property. I talked to my client about this and we went over how much the value of the property is plus the road frontage. At this moment, I can offer you up to $125,000 for the property.
So I'm a little confused on why they basically make two offers. It's like investors are paying 70 to 80, but I'm paying 125. Maybe there's an argument that it's a price anchor, but I don't know. Again, I wouldn't do it. Again, the seller sounds optimistic where she's okay, this might work. So maybe this is a motivated seller. Maybe this ends up being a deal. I do like to say that like when we're talking sales training, I like the example of building for a BMW versus a Toyota. I don't know if you've heard me talk about this example before, but if you talk to a German car manufacturer, BMW being like the gold standard for a nice luxury vehicle, they would tell you this car will last you a very long time. So long as you go in with the required maintenance, we have that all recommended in a manual, you do these things, this car will last a very long time. And then you have Toyota. That's, man, we know humans suck and are lazy. So we can suggest all the maintenance we want. They're never going in. So we need to build the car despite knowing that humans aren't going to get their maintenance going. And so the point there is when we talk about sales training, yeah, some sellers are going to say yes, even if you're bad. And I'm sorry, I'm not trying to call this person bad. I just mean they're not following the process that I would be teaching. And I want to build to be Toyota. I don't want to be BMW. BMW is still going to sell some cars. Toyota is known for their quality. And as a salesperson, I want to be known for my quality. So, anyways, my whole point here is we are 72 seconds into this call. Timestamp on my screen says 1 minute and 12 seconds. We're already talking price, right? If you followed like the script that I've got, there's so many different things that I lay out before we get here. I want to understand why the seller bought the property, what they're planning to do with the money, what they're, hoping to do in the future. I want to go through all three types of eliminating, or excuse me, all four types of eliminating potential objections. I'll skip to it here in a little bit, but we got a husband objection, which is a partner spouse objection. I'll go over this briefly and just say there's four types of objections. Partner spouse, which is I need to talk to my husband, wife, cousin, brother, tooth fairy, whatever. You have timing, which there's two types of timing based objections. There's event centric and then just like sale centric. Event centric is like when something actually needs to happen. Grandma just died, probate needs to happen before we can do this. Sale centric is more so just like sellers calling the shots and they really want it done in 30 days instead of 90 or whatever for no reason, doesn't serve any benefit. So we have partner spouse, we've got timing, we have certainty, which is, hey, can I trust you? What happens after this? That's another thing we didn't cover here, which is why the seller had a lack of clarity after it's, wait, so what happens if we agree, if we sign this? Like, where does this go and when and who pays what? Like, we should have talked about all of that before the offer. Like, there should have been what I call the pitch, which is where we investors typically are like, hey, Kendall, we're so cool. We don't work with any realtors. You have no commissions. We pay all title fees. This is your net dollar amount. And that's where we talk about every title company we work with is a trusted title company. Typically, we close these transactions within 90 days. The offer we discuss will be net to your pocket. Do you have any questions about that? Like I'm going through all that so they understand next steps, because if you don't, you're uncertain. Uncertainty breeds fear, breeds a lack of action. Okay. I'm going to say that again. Uncertainty breeds fear, breeds a lack of action. All of us have experienced sellers lack action, and it's because they're uncertain. Whether they're uncertain on themselves, whether they're uncertain they want to work with you, or whether they're uncertain on how working with you looks, that's the reality, right? But I know I skipped around a bit here. I'm going through my notes, and those are all things I noticed. I'm going to pause. Kendall, what's going through your head right now, man?
Yeah, no, I think it's really good to give a little bit of clarity about this as well. Is for those listening, this particular call is part of a two-call close. So this is the second call.
Totally.
This is the type of framework that Ajay was talking about earlier, is having that two-call close. Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely spot on. I think that a confused mind always says no. So like
Exactly.
in my process, I really like to, one of the things that we'll do is when we're trying to get a seller back on the phone is we'll text or we might email and always provide some type of like little hook, little value. Some of that value might be like an ebook of, hey, these are the hidden costs of holding vacant land in this county or whatever it is. Part of
Right.
the other value that we'll send out is what we call the roadmap to closing. It's just a PDF that shows the 4 or 5 steps to closing. That way they understand what happens at every step of the way. They sign the check or they sign the purchase agreement to when they get the check and where that comes from. So that way it lays some groundwork. And if we don't have the opportunity to send that, we usually go over it right there on the phone.
Totally. That's so good, man. That's so good. I love being able to send that checklist after you're getting ghosted. It's a really good thing. What I will say with the two call close is I get a lot of folks who maybe use the past, present, future we talk about in the first call. I would encourage them to just be sure to include those questions on like eliminating future objections, right? Because I don't want to get uncertainty and I have to talk to my husband. So I might ask a question like, hey, Kendall, is there anybody else who needs to sign off on this before we can move forward? And so, like, just being able to ask questions like that before we talk price. And the reason it needs to be before price is because they could throw anything at us after. And we don't know what the actual issue is when a lot of times it really just is price. Now, this gal sounded like it really was just her husband. But guys, like, here's the reality. A lot of us here are too uncomfortable to even make the offer, right? The reality is a lot of sellers are too uncomfortable to tell us no. And so instead they throw a smokescreen at us because they're humans too, that also don't do sales, that also don't do negotiations for a living. And so they might throw a smokescreen at us to just get us off the phone and then ghost us and never call us back.
Absolutely. I know. Listen, I've talked to people, and not even in the land space, but I was talking to a friend of mine who we were talking about the sales process when it comes to like high ticket sales. And she said, Kendall, I can't tell you how many times someone has called me and made a high ticket like offer pitch. And I've said, yes, absolutely. And I give my credit card because I'm too afraid to say no. And then I just like, what do you call the,
Chargeback?
yeah, chargeback because I'm
No
too afraid to say
way.
no. Yeah, like that exists for some people. It's a psychology thing. Hey, Ajay, so something else I wanted to point out,
Yes.
just done a masterful job of talking about the content of that call. One thing that I would love to point out and get your thoughts on is something that's not always so easy to put your finger on, like tone, cadence, timing.
Totally.
So one of the things that stuck out to me about this particular call was if you listen to it, one of like the number one thing before I even listened to the content was the fact that the the acquisitions manager was stepping on top of the
Mm,
seller. So it felt like she was in a rush to hurry up and just get off of the call or hurry up and say something versus
totally.
just like really giving that number time to sit, getting like just allowing breathing room so the seller
Yeah.
feels safe, right? And so can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit about some of the maybe the non-concrete things, the tonality, the cadence, the timing that you heard? If you're enjoying this episode of the Only Land Fans podcast, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. Now let's get back to the action.
Definitely. Definitely. I would agree with you about stepping on the seller. I think our rule is number one, first and foremost, never ever interrupt the seller, right? Now, there are some exceptions, and guys, they are so rare. Okay. If a seller is talking, and I'm going to give you guys this tip. I know this is not the question you asked, but I have to do it. If a seller's going on and they're just not answering my question, if you have an Ajay on the phone that just like talks too much and doesn't close the loop, for example, but picture like Ajay in 60 years when he's got nobody else to talk to. Uh, Kendall doesn't want him on his podcast
I
anymore.
will be
Uh,
talking to you,
yeah.
Ajay. I will be talking to you.
I hope so, man. But in the event you don't want to, for whatever reason, something you can do is pretend like the signal gets disconnected for a sec and you just go, hello? And they're like, yeah, I'm here. And I'm, oh, sorry, I lost you there for a second. Hey, what I was asking you was, boom, and you're right back in.
It's just like
So,
a pattern interrupt where you
yes,
can at least just get them back and stop the stream of conscious.
without interrupting them, as long as if there's value in what they're talking about, don't interrupt them just because you want to talk, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, to double down though on tonality. So there's the timing cadence you were talking about. When it comes to tonality, there was like a level of uncertainty in voice, and that comes from inflection a lot of
Yeah.
times. So here's the difference, right? And this is going to be a terrible example because I can't think of a better one. But Kendall, if you were over and let's say you're staying at my house because we're good buddies and that's what we do, even though you've never come over. Let's say
I've never been invited, but that's okay. No, I'm just
Oh
kidding.
man,
I've
okay.
totally.
We'll change that, man. We'll change that. I'm sorry, everybody. We're good buddies, so I josh with him sometimes. I'll stay on track though. So if you're over and let's say I want to invite you down to dinner for because now we're bunkmates and that's a normal thing to do. And so if I'm like, hey Kendall, want to come to dinner? It sounds like a question. It also sounds I don't know the outcome, right? Now we're gonna change the tonality and see how this sounds. If I'm like, Kendall, do you want to come to dinner? You see how that sounded very different?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Kendall's like,
Absolutely.
yeah, I'm a little scared.
Like, I don't know what kind of dinner you're thinking of.
Not any that you'd want to attend with that tone.
Yeah, exactly.
The
Exactly.
point overall being, first and foremost, tonality really matters. Number two, though, is I would really pay attention to inflecting upwards, especially. That is the most common thing I hear in sales calls of people. And when you use that upward inflection, it just sounds like you're not confident, you don't know what you're talking about, right? A better example of this would be Kendall, you were a teacher. What subject were you band specifically, or what subject
And
did you teach? You were band. Man, I don't have a big music background, so this is going to be a bad example. But if I were to ask you, like, hey, what's this note? And you were to say C sharp, it sounds like you don't know.
exactly.
Are you asking me? And I being me, I'm a very direct person, and I would be like, are you asking me or telling me? That's a question I ask my wife more often than I should. But my point being if you respond that way and you actually did know that inflection, despite being natural, despite you knowing with 20 years of training, communicates to my subconscious that you don't know. Versus if I'm like, Kendall, what note is this? And you say C sharp. I'm like, okay, got it. Thanks. Boom. We're
Yeah.
locked in.
Yeah.
If you inflected downwards, that's where it gets scary. And I don't know if I want to play piano with you anymore.
No, that's a really good point, Ajay, because you just said something that I think really illustrates how difficult it is to suss this out is the fact that you said subconsciously. So I think a lot of people, when they're not comfortable or confident in what they're saying, they will like subconsciously, they will have that lilt up at the end.
Yes.
And subconsciously, the seller, I don't think some sellers might be like, this person doesn't sound what they know what they're talking about. But a lot of sellers or people that are just listening to this in general would subconsciously, because we're taught from a very young age that inflection up means a question. And
Right.
so, like when we hear that, subconsciously it's registering that this person might not be telling me the whole thing. Like
Right.
there's something that just doesn't feel solid and in control. And
Right.
so a lot of this is happening on the subconscious level, right? Which is why you really do need to go back and listen to recordings and listen to between the lines, because that's not the kind of stuff that a transcript can pick up.
Totally. And I think a lot of people, man, they talk to me today and they're like, Ajay, you just were given all these gifts and you're just so naturally good on the phones. And I'm like, guys, I wish I had recordings of my first couple of phone calls. Because I do just want to tell everybody too, guys, I've been doing this almost 5 years, right? I've got almost half a decade of experience of talking to sellers and talking to people and selling different things. And so that comes with experience, comes with confidence. Confidence comes with experience, I should say, right? Um, when I started, I was just like everybody else. You get those calls and you see the number pop up, your heart picks up, right? Your palms are sweating. Like, guys, I was anxious. I was uncomfortable. My voice would shake on the phone. Like, it's just normal because it's new, right? And I think a concept that a lot of entrepreneurs wrestle with is imposter syndrome, right? Where you feel like a phony essentially, because you're like, dude, I am supposed to be this guy that's going to be buying this property for $50,000. I don't even know how to buy a property, right? And fine, maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But here's the reality: is if you ever have imposter syndrome, Layla Hormozi, famous entrepreneur, says that's just a sign of growth. It's almost worrisome if you don't have imposter syndrome because it means you're not growing, right? If you're growing, you're coming into a new identity. And growing's painful. That's why they're called growing pains. So just know, like, I sounded just as bad as everybody else here. I was uncomfortable as much as everybody else. I hated making lowball offers when I started doing this. Like, it's part of it. If you want success in the business, it just comes with all those things. Anything you want to
Yeah.
add?
Yeah, I think that you're so spot on in terms of that imposter syndrome. And by the way, that never really goes away because we're all just trying to figure out how to do what we do the best that we can. If you are thinking at all about trying to improve and be the best version of yourself, you're always going to have that. But one of the things that's been really helpful for the people that I work with is I recommend a book called The Alter Ego Effect. Have you read this book?
I have not. I haven't even heard of this book.
Yeah, so this book it's really good. It's by Todd Herman, but he talks about the fact that sometimes you have to trick your subconscious, right? So if you know that you don't have any deals under your belt, you might have a valid reason for why you feel like an imposter. But in order to not come across that way, you have to tell your subconscious that you're not an imposter. What's the best way to do that? Or one of the most effective ways to do it is to put on an alter ego, play a role, play the role that like I
Mm,
have closed 20 deals. What would
mm,
that sound like? And he goes into this and he has lots of different examples, like Beyonce, for example. That's a really famous example of this is her performance alter ego. When she says she's on the stage, she's not Beyonce, she's Sasha Fierce. That's her alter ego
really?
because that gives her sort of the identity to be able to hold the stage presence of arenas. And so when you think about it, man, I know some people that have gone to the degree of I'm just going to put on an accent. Like it's not me. That's not normally what I would do, but I'm going to put on an accent. And it tricks the subconscious that, oh, I'm just playing a role. And so it
Wow.
allows you to get through a lot of that. But I also wanted to point out, Ajay, so you started this call saying that, and I love this quote, and I'm going to butcher it, so I'm not even going to try to repeat it,
Yeah.
but is we are trying to help people to make decisions, right?
Yep.
And they make decisions by information. There's also an important component to that as well, though, is that someone can have the best information in the world, but if they don't feel good about it, they're
Mm,
not going to execute, right? We do business with people that we know and trust, not who gives us the most information always. And which is why a lot of people know they can explain to death, send comps and everything, show all of the information a seller still doesn't sign. And so I think that this emotion piece is really important because I also like to add an additional level to this is just like you said, was our desired outcome in each of these calls. A really important desired outcome that I also teach my team is how do we want the seller to feel in that interaction with us?
mm,
What do we want them to experience? Do we want them to experience feeling confused or rushed? Or do we want them to feel like this person can do what they say they're going to do? Right. And I
yeah.
think that all of that comes through tone and inflection and timing and all of those non concrete elements of the call. Cool. All right. I think I kicked that horse enough.
No, man, that's good. And I will say too, man, you just talking about the identity piece reminded me of something I've been ruminating on. I think the new year is always just so good at just reflecting on your past year, thinking forward to the new one. It's a reminder to just reevaluate your progress. And I've read this thing so many times where the encouragement is set goals so high that you have to meet a new version of yourself to reach them,
Yeah.
right?
So
Like
good.
if your goals don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough, right? But it also means you need to be willing to reinvent the version you are. So Ajay, as a multi seven figure net real estate investor, is a different person than who I am today. And I need to do different things every day and maybe hire different people or work on different types of deals or I don't there's something different there though. And
Yeah.
so if I'm going to go set that as a goal where I want to net 3 million next year, man, I've got to go become a different version. And I can't wait to meet that version of Ajay. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. You have to become the person that would net those types of figures. Yeah,
Right.
so good. So good. Love it. As a matter of fact, I literally just had a conversation with Callan about this.
Oh,
We
really?
talked about this topic. So good. So good. Um, which is a whole podcast episode in and of itself.
Totally.
So let's swing over back to closing because that's what
Yes,
we're here to talk about today.
sure.
Do we have time for you to spot check one more? Do you
Let's
think?
try.
Yeah, so we don't have to listen to the whole thing. Maybe just spot check a couple of,
Sure. In the calls.
yeah, let's
Um,
do that third one.
that third. Okay. Is it a different person? Do you know?
Yeah.
Okay. And I like to see. Okay. It's only 5 minutes long. So I might just, we'll play it and I'll pause throughout to point things
Cool.
out rather than listening to the whole thing.
Love it.
All right, great to hear that. Yeah, I'm actually here right now to present an offer here as I've run numbers on your property. And
Okay.
yeah, and you've owned the land for over 30 years? That's a long time
Yeah.
to hold a property.
Okay. So real quick, she said she's calling to present an offer and then asked a different question. I would be shocked if 3 out of 5 sellers weren't like, bro, what's your offer? Talk about a tease. And so we talk about this concept of framing in our sales calls, which essentially is giving the seller an agenda for the call. That's how I like describing it. So if I'm talking to you, Kendall, I'm here to discuss working together on our property. The way these typically goes, I just need to confirm a couple more details and then I'll see if we can work out a number. Is now still a good time to chat, right? You're going to say yes. I'm going to be like, awesome. So the first question I've got here is actually, I am curious, right? So now we've got a tonal disruption. Actually, I'm curious. I'm seeing here you've owned it since 1981. What was going on in 1981? See, I didn't just ask, like, why'd you buy the property? That's a question everybody asks. So I like asking these in different ways so you don't sound like everybody else. And I say that, and then I give away all my scripts for free, and now everybody's going to sound like me. So I don't know how valid that is, but whatever. Neither here nor there, man. Um,
So good.
just a quick piece there about framing because it sets the tone for the call, and it's the I forget what Hormozy calls it, but it's like the Eminem thing where if I say something first, I take away somebody's power to say it to me. So when I say the Eminem thing, I'm talking about, if you guys have seen the movie 8 Mile, the third rap battle, which is sick. If you haven't seen it, go watch the movie, y'all. You know, where he's on stage. I am white. I am a bum. I do live in a trailer with my mom. And then the other guy can't say anything against him and drops the mic and Eminem wins. So my point here is, guys, we know things that sellers say to us frequently. So if we say them first, they can't say them to us. Hey, Kendall, like, we'll get into an offer after I'd say these things, is basically what that agenda is. Hey, I just need to confirm a couple of details and then we'll get into numbers, right? See if we can work something out. But I just told you, first we got to do this, homeboy. You're a lot less likely to be like, what's your offer? I'd be like, dude, I just told you I need to confirm some details before I can do that.
Exactly.
Another good example of this that I hear a lot is, I don't know, you called me. And so to that, what questions do we typically get there? The first one is asking price, is typically where we get that question. So if I'm asking for asking price, I'm going to call out the thing they're going to say to me. Okay. Here's what that sounds like. Kendall, man, I see you've owned this property for 40 years. Typically, somebody who has owned a property for 40 years knows what they're looking for, right? And I know that we reached out to you, so this may be uncomfortable, but do you have a number in mind? See how I like already called it out, right? Maybe I even switched the placement of it and put it even earlier. Hey, Kendall, I know we're the ones that reached out to you and this is out of the blue, but let me ask, man, typically somebody that's owned a property this long kind of knows what they're wanting for. What was the number you had in your mind? Right. Another thing we'll do to get numbers out, I'll go down rabbit holes for days on closing. If I need to get an asking price out of somebody, is I'll ask something like, hey, have you received other offers on the property? And they're like, oh, yeah, tons. And I'm like, oh, okay. Can I ask, like, why did you turn those down? And they're typically going to tell you price. Sometimes it's terms, though. I've had some deals where, they wanted 180 days. I'm not giving that to nobody. You close in 30 or you're not serious. Like, oh, dang it. Okay, we need to get this at a flip price. But right. But typically it's going to be price. And I'd be like, oh, okay. So is price a big deal or a little deal? I stole that one from Eric Brewer. It's a big deal. Got it. So if this is a big deal and what a no would be, can I ask what would be a yes? They're not going to be like, well, you called me, you tell me. Most of the time, they're just going to give you the price, right? So there's like ways you got to ask some leading questions to get there instead of just the direct, so Kendall, what's your price? I'm just going down a checklist. We're 20 seconds in and I'm like going way too deep here. I need to hit play.
So, it's gold though. So good.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, we had two pieces actually.
I'm actually looking at the one 0.46 acres right now.
I already sold the other one to a niece.
Oh, yeah, that's a long time to hold a property. What was your initial plan for that?
One of them we were planning to move and live on, and the other one was just going to be an investment.
Oh, the one that I have right now?
That was probably going to be just an investment because we already had an acre.
Oh, I see. But you're not currently living in Florida?
No, we're not. I'm not leaving New Jersey, believe it or not.
I understand. But when is the last time that you visited?
I don't understand. I would not stay in New Jersey if I owned property in Florida, but neither here nor there.
The property there?
Probably 20 years.
20 years?
I have family in Spring Hill, so I used to go down.
So they're the one who visit the property there?
Once every 3 or 4 years or so.
Got you. And as I've checked in here, I think there is an access on the road, but it's something like a dirt road, if I'm not mistaken. Correct me if I'm not.
Just a few things here. I don't want to sound like culturalist here, but like I can tell this person's Filipino, which is super normal. I've trained tons of Filipino closers, not a bad thing at all. I've hired many Filipino staff in my past. I love working with them. They are awesome. Just a few things, though, that you need to be extra mindful of somebody who's not like a U.S. native. I would just be careful to tweak some verbiage here. So it's really normal in Filipino culture to say got you instead of got it. It's just not something we say to each other. If I'm talking to Kendall, at no point I'm like, got you. It's a slight cultural thing, though, I think, in how it translates literally. And then number two is when they're asking about access, like I almost don't even use the word access when I'm talking to a property owner. I'm just like asking about the road. What can you tell me about the road that leads to the property? Again, I think you build authority by asking good questions. So you want to make sure you know what you're talking about when you're speaking with a seller. So there's just like an authoritative piece that I want to call out here. It's 2 layers meta, but I hear it and I have to call it out.
Yeah, no, that's really good. Something else that I hear a lot of Filipino virtual assistants use is lands.
Lands, yeah.
And
1 acres property.
and I know that sounds like something that's really minor, but when you put that to someone that's like really rural and they're for lack of they're rural, right? They lots
Is
of
that the word you're trying
times
to use? Because I feel like I'm hearing a different one.
lots of times they immediately think scam. They immediately think that, especially the older the seller is, because they're like, oh my God, is this a Nigerian prince trying to take my money? That's how it can read if they don't have command of even those tiny details of the English language.
Totally. Totally. And this isn't to belittle anybody that's foreign.
No.
It's just, hey, if we're going to be working, doing this role, let's just train for, again, similar to how we have a couple of objections that are super normal. Let's train for things we see commonly that somebody whose English is their second, third, fourth language might mess up. You know what I mean? These
Yeah.
are super easy things, which again, I just want to highlight is a benefit of call reviews. If you were not doing these with your staff, this is stuff you hear and you can train on. You're like, oh, I didn't know my staff said these things. That's probably hurting their closing rate. Let's drill down on this and work on this together. And as long as they're open to feedback, sweet. Everybody learns. We all make more money. Like the world goes round and round.
I love it. Yeah. Know your audience. Know how is what they are saying going to be received. That's so important.
Love it.
Actually checking.
I think there's still dirt roads, yeah.
Yeah,
in
it's a
that
dirt
part.
road, and the property also needs to be cleared out. And you wanted to get 20,000 for it?
At least.
For this 0.46
Yeah.
acres, at least 20,000. Is that might be something negotiable? I'm an investor and I need to clear it out a lot.
It would be the least.
That's really the least that you can do.
Absolutely.
As I've run numbers here.
Again, that right there, that negotiating, it's just not my favorite. If I know somebody's asking price is above what I'm about to offer, I wouldn't bring it up. Like, I'm not going to be like, oh, so you want 20? I'm going to give you 12. And again,
Yeah.
guys, I'm very silly. So when I joke, I'm not making fun of this person. I'm just like calling this out in a certain hubris that's silly and fun and it's good for attention. So I'm not making fun of this person. They had the chutzpah to actually get on, talk to a seller, make an offer. These are all things that like strong and confident people do. So like they're doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. We can always get better, right?
Yeah.
Toyota, let's go places. You know what I mean?
Yeah. They're in the arena, which is half
We're
the
in the
battle.
arena. That's
So,
more than most people can say.
exactly. Yeah.
I've actually have the exact calculation that I need to do. Since we are an investor, I'm going to cover the closing costs. The offer that I'm going to present right now, all the money will go directly into your pocket. There's no other fees that you need to pay for that.
Right.
And we can definitely do it. Hopefully that it won't sit for the market for at least a month or two, so we could be able to. But right now, are you open to? I could be able to offer here for 18,000 for it.
8,000?
Oh, 18, 1-8.
18?
Mm-hmm. If you're,
Not at this time.
I just said
maybe.
20,000 is really,
Yeah.
So again, she's interrupting him here. This whole negotiation piece is just really tough because first of all, 18 and 20 is so freaking close.
Lock it up. That's what I would like. Just lock it up.
There's like a few pieces here that I want to call out. The first one would be like, if I'm talking price, I'm going to make my offer first, right? Hey, Kendall, I'm seeing investors in the area are paying between, it looks like 12 to 18. What would you say to one of those investors if they made an offer like that? And be like, I'd probably say no. And I'd be like, oh, okay, what are you looking for? I don't bring up an asking price if it doesn't serve me. If they were asking for 17, I'm going to bring it back up. But if they don't, I'm going to pretend like I don't even have the info. Okay.
Yes.
And be like,
Yes.
I need 20,000. 20,000. And that's your absolute rock bottom. Yes. So if I came back with an offer anywhere below 20,000, should I even call you back? Right? Like I almost act like I don't have the offer in front of me. Right. So I'm going to try a couple of times and they're going to be like, no. I'm just like, okay. Well, man, I'm going to be honest with you. Our offer is in that range. Are you open to terms? And so I may not volunteer closing costs because that can be about $1,000 pretty quick. Now we're talking about a delta of $1,000. That's a deal. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
52% instead of 50. We make up the fudge somewhere else. You know what I mean? If it ends up being a thinner deal, go for the double close pitch. But if they tell me no a few times, like I always want to isolate the objection. We hear that all the time. Isolate, then overcome it. What does that actually mean? If I'm hearing an objection, right? I need 20,000. We negotiate on price. They tell us to kick rocks. I'm gonna be like, Kendall, just so I understand, is price the only thing stopping us from working together? Aside from price, is there anything preventing us from moving forward? We haven't made sure there's no partner spouse objection. We haven't made sure there's no timing objection. We've done a little bit to assert authority. I may bring in like how long we've been doing this to assert a little bit more. We've asked some okay questions. This isn't a bad call by any means, but those are all ways that we could improve it. But I want to hear how the rest of this negotiation goes.
Somebody wants to sell it for 32,000.
32.
A realtor down there.
Got you. Yeah, because a realtor can list in the market for maybe 100 days or so. As an investor, we really wanted to get rid of the property as soon as possible, especially if you really wanted to get rid of it. But if I know that you wanted to get 20,000 for it, as I've actually calculated, I need to clear the lot. I need to see something in there, some factors that I need to do. And so that's why also I need to.
Calling all ambitious land flippers, ready to transform your business with proven systems and processes? Imagine this. One of my students recently closed 2 land deals and got another under contract in just 24 hours. That's the power of a well-oiled land flipping machine. My exclusive coaching program is specifically designed for action takers just like you. We'll build out your entire operation from lead gen to dispo, implementing these systems on real deals from day one. But hurry, I'm only accepting 3 new students until 2025. If you've done deals, have a growth mindset, and are ready to scale, visit kindlecall.com now. Let's turn your land business into a consistent profit powerhouse.
And we're playing a logic game right now. Okay, I need to clear the lot. A realtor is going to let it sit. I'm playing an uphill game here. I'm like grasping for straws, trying to get them to just be like, again, I have never met an owner that I'm like, hey, I need to clear the lot. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, 18's fine.
I didn't even think about clearing the lot. Let's do 18. Yeah.
I was literally just doing a call review a few hours ago on this where it's, wait, so would you bring up the logic at all? And I'm like, no, it doesn't serve a purpose. They don't care that the market's getting soft. They don't care that I need to clear the lot. They don't care about any of that. They care about the money that goes into their pocket and what they do with it. That's what they care about, right? I have a whole bunch of points I want to hit, but let's just finish out a piece of this call. I want to see where this goes.
We'll get some margin on the deal, but if I can
I appreciate the offer, and
I give her kudos for keeping him on the phone. That's a skill in sales. So like kudos to her for that.
Yeah. What if I can get 20,000 for it? Are you willing to move forward just in case? Because I also.
There we go. She said, hey, if I can get you 20K, what's up, Poppy? We doing this? You know?
Have a partner and to discuss it with him. If
she needs to stop talking though. So if you're gonna make a pitch, if you're gonna make an offer, shut up after, right? Kendall, if I could get you 20,000, would we be able to move forward? Boom, stop talking then.
Yes.
Right? Now, I would ask in a prevention way, would anything prevent us from moving forward? But I'm trying to use her verbiage here. Regardless, stop talking after that. We don't need to sell anymore. We just need to see what they're going to say.
We could go with 20,000 for it. Because right now, actually, the numbers that I can do is 18. But if you would agree with 20,000, are you willing to move forward?
I would have to check with my wife.
Boom, wife objection. This is exactly why we need to screen for objections before. So, again, we got to place those objection eliminators in our script before we talk price. Anybody else that needs to sign off on this? Now, when I get that objection, I need to talk to my wife, you know what I'm going to ask them, Kendall? I'm going to say 1 or 2 talk tracks, depending on which way I'm feeling that day. Okay. The first one is, why do you think your wife would be against us working together? That's my first question. Because honestly, now he's probably just uncomfortable. What did you just say? A confused brain does nothing?
Used mind says no.
Yeah, I think this guy's a little frazzled right now because she just keeps chirping at him. And I shouldn't say, I forgot this is somebody from, I think, that submitted a call. So they're going to see this. I say all this with love. Okay. This is so you can make more money and close more deals. But
what we're all about.
Totally. It's stop talking. And I think we would get more out of him. But I feel like he's confused at this point as to like, where are these guys really at? Are they legit? Now I'm a little flustered. Do you hear that in him too? Or I don't know.
Totally. Right. And the whole stepping on him, like you can hear that he's trying to say something. And I feel like it just agitates the situation when he can't get out what he wants to say.
Agreed. I'm curious how this finishes.
On it also.
Okay. So you're both on the title.
On the deed, yeah.
Okay. No worries. But if you go, if we can get a deal for 20K, we can do that as soon as possible. I can definitely send you the agreement and then you guys can review it.
Here's the thing. She keeps pushing time. We don't even know if that's a component. I think sometimes we try to sell on stuff that the sellers don't even care about.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
It's like, why do we keep pushing that we can do this so fast? Because he never said he needed it fast. And honestly, when another party in negotiation pushes speed, it almost communicates to me they know something I don't. I'm like,
Yes.
where do they think they've got an edge here? What do they know about my property that I don't? Right.
That's
So
a really good point, Ajay. You just said, why do they feel like they have an edge here? Tell us a little bit about your thoughts on, I've heard it said before that negotiations should feel like everyone got something and gave something. So, what do you feel about that? I know when I walk away from a negotiation, I don't want to feel like I have just been completely screwed. So,
really,
what are
that's
your
like usually how I like feeling after a negotiation.
I like to feel like I need a nap after a
Totally.
negotiation because I've been beat. No. So, what do you think about that?
No, that's such a great point, Kendall. And if you see me fidgeting, I'm looking for my fidget spinner. I forgot I dropped it earlier in this interview. I'm still
Mhm.
in 2015. I play with a fidget spinner. But no, to answer your question, I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think, man, where my brain goes is yes, we all need to feel like we gave something and we got something. We also need to feel like we both won in some way. Like our
Yes.
job is to procure property at some level, right? I have no inventory if I don't have land to sell. They want cash to do things in their life, which is where I come back to emotions being a driver in decision making, right?
Mm.
I've been saying this a lot lately, and I've said it 4 times today, and I don't remember if one of them was on this interview. So feel free to tell me to shut up if I have already. But logically, should a seller that doesn't need to sell a property sell me a property for 50 cents on the dollar?
No.
No. Do they?
Yes.
So what does that tell me? It tells me that people make decisions based on emotion rather than logic. And so my goal as a salesperson is to drive their decision based on their emotions, right? So if I'm speaking to him, number one, he mentioned this was an investment. I'm like, oh, an investment. I didn't know you were an investor. I'm gas him up a little bit. Really smart of you for buying investment property in Florida. Dude, make him feel smart. You know what I mean? I'd be like, if this is an investment after you guys liquidate this, I don't know if I'd use that word or not. It depends on their sophistication, right? After you sell this, are you guys like, what's your next investment? Right. And again, if I've gassed them up appropriately, they're going to either tell me something, oh, no, we're going to go do something else with it. Because people like to correct, right? Oh, okay. Anything fun? Do you and the wife have plans? I've been meaning to take her on a vacation. Boom. Like now they're starting to spend the money mentally. I'm going to ask them every question I can about that. Then I'm going to ask them some type of question when we're negotiating. Kendall, let me ask, man, how important is it for you to go on this trip in the next 90 days? Right? What would happen if you never went on the trip? You know what I mean? Like you can play this emotional game to help them make a decision here. But if I play the logic game, like, dude, again, they don't care about the trees getting cut. They don't care about the lawn getting mowed. They don't care that the market's getting soft. They don't care about any of that. They care about going on their trips. They care about getting a new car. They care about redoing their kitchens. They care about getting backyard patio furniture, right? So to answer your question, man, to be honest, the seller's gonna feel like they got something because they got cash, but they're really gonna feel like they get something if they know what they're gonna go get with that cash. Whether it's peace of mind and security because they have more money in their bank, right? Oh, we're just gonna put it in savings. Oh, okay. What would an extra 30,000 in savings do to you and your wife? Oh my gosh, it would just be so nice to have the cushion. Oh, I'd love for you to have that peace. And see what that does. It's a different conversation. Does that make sense?
Makes total sense. And really, what you're describing is be a human talking to another human, right?
Totally.
And figuring out what matters to them. I think
Oh,
that's really important. This has been absolutely incredible. Thank you so much, Ajay. I want to be respectful of your time, so we will start wrapping up here. But I want to thank you for just being so generous and for giving to us today. How can we give back to you right now? What types of connections or resources are you currently looking for?
totally, man. I'm gonna drop my Venmo in the chat. No, I'm just kidding.
This was a consultation call, so if your call has been reviewed, you owe Ajay $500. So he's gonna drop the Venmo.
That's hysterical. No, man. I'm always looking to do deals. If you guys have deals, need some funding, whatever. Like I love JVing with folks. You're welcome to reach out. I'm super active on Instagram at investing with Ajay. Feel free to just DM me there. I also just came out with a bunch of sales training. So I mentioned it throughout the call. But first and foremost, if you're just getting ramped up or you're not in a position to spend any money, that's okay. I put together all of my sales training for free in a library on School. Kendall, are we able to link that in the show notes for folks?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes, we'll do
I'll
it.
give you those links. Number two, I just launched a paid community, so it does cost money. I can make information free. I unfortunately cannot make my time free, but I launched a paid community called the Land Closers Academy Inner Circle. I know Kendall's got a link to that. He'll drop in the show notes as well. We meet every single week to listen to your calls. You're basically getting me as a fractional sales manager where I listen to your calls, answer your questions, give you and your team's feedback. And it's, in my opinion, extremely affordable considering how much you make on a deal. Yeah, that's pretty much what I got right now.
So good. I love it. And I'm so excited to see you leaning into this like zone of genius because I know you're good at so many things, but I know that right now people are needing this closing stuff. And so I'm so glad to see that you're doing it. It inspired me and it got me so excited that I wanted to jump in on the land closers train. So if people are listening to this, any Only Land fans, audience member, if you join Ajay's community, his paid community, right? If you go to olfclosers.com, I will actually gift you a free call review template that you can use with your team. So it is using all of the principles that Ajay and I talked about today. It's a template that you can add to your resources and into your management toolbox. That way you can review other calls and you can review your own calls. It's a really fantastic tool. So I will be gifting that if you use olfclosers.com. We'll put that link in the show notes as well. And if you're on the live call, it's there in the chat. Super excited. So many great opportunities to get a little bit more Ajay in your life. So definitely make sure that you take advantage. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been fantastic. Ajay, always a pleasure. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Until next time, take care, be safe, and we'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. If you're interested in hearing from other seven-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at onlylandfans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.